Well, first of all, welcome. We are very happy that you're here to learn with us together about this grand and glorious process called college admissions. So we hope it's a good night for you all. We want to start in the same way that we start all things at CBC, and that is with prayer. So let's take a second and remember that we're in the holy presence of God. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God, we ask your blessing on this journey that we all embark upon. This journey of discovery and growth. Help us to remember that you have plans of fullness for us all. Bless these young men of the class of 2016 and help them to find great fits for college. Bless the parents, guardians, grandparents, all who gather in support of these young men as well. And as we engage this process of discovery and journey, help us to always remember that we are in your holy presence. St. John Baptist did us out with Jesus in our hearts. All right, before I introduce our featured guest speaker, I want to just kind of paint a picture of what the night's going to look like for those of you who enjoy knowing the big picture. We'll begin with our featured speaker, Rob Dirkle. I'll introduce him in a second. And then after Rob talks, guidance staff will talk and chip in just a little bit of a perspective from our end of the thing. Mrs. English will cover some second semester specific things, and Mr. Gillard will wrap up with a few Naviance related things that might be helpful to us all. And then if we have time for Q&A, we'll do that. So it is my great honor to introduce our main speaker. Mr. Rob Dirkle is on the far right there, and he is officially the Assistant Vice President for Enrollment Management at the University of Dayton. We know Rob as friend and colleague and mentor and wise man. And also, we know he's a dad to 3 grown folks. He's helped shepherd his own kids through college. So Rob just brings an incredible wealth of knowledge about the experience of college admissions. So we're delighted that he is here. Just by way of background, Rob's been in this 30-something years. He is Dayton trained and has been at Dayton for a long time. He received his bachelor's in secondary ed and followed that up with a master's in counselor education. He began his career as an admissions counselor, young guy, trying to help others share his experience, and he's worked his way all the way up to the top, where he is now the assistant vice president. He has presented in numerous places, including to the ACT and the College Board, to the Ohio Association for College Admission Counselors, and at numerous high school events like this. So we're delighted and thrilled to introduce Mr. Rob Dirkle. Thank you.
Thanks, Walt. I know you now know how to use Google search. Everything came out of that Google Doc, right? I didn't even know I did half those things. Yes, I have had the fortune of 3 children going through this process, and I will tell you that my wife will still tell all of you I know nothing about the process. When we would go to our visits, I would almost look like a plant in the audience because I would start asking questions in which the admissions staff would say, "We don't know the answer, we don't know the answer." And by about the 3rd or 4th question, my wife said, shut up. Our daughter's never going to be admitted here. Well, I wanted her to go through D, of course, and my wife wanted her to look at all the options, which you should too. But it's a pleasure being here. I enjoy coming out every year. I have an opportunity to come out and see friends at the various high schools. I was in St. Louis for probably about 20 years of my 30-some years, visiting high schools, doing programs at all the schools in the area. So I don't get to come back much anymore except for this program, so I take full advantage of it and come back and visit with you, but I also get a chance to visit friends as well. I thought what I would do is just kind of talk a little bit about what it's like to be on the other side of the desk. I know you're all juniors getting ready to start this process a year from now, but really the process should start now. And I'm going to do it through a series of questions. And the reason I do it that way is because these are questions oftentimes that come our way when students come to visit with us. And I think the answers to those questions will vary from school to school because each of us has a different process in which we go through. So using that formula, I've got a couple topics that I want to touch upon, and then we'll let the rest of the program go forward. And then if you've got questions, I think we'll do that at the end with things you might want to know about the process. So I would start with the process. And what I think the important questions would be to each of the schools that you're considering is what is this process called admissions at your college or university. It used to be when I was coming out to visit schools back in the 80s, here's a paper application, fill it out, send the transcript to us, and we're done. Now we have the Common App, we have a supplement to the Common App, we have our own application, we have the first application, second application, we have all types of decisions like early decision, early action, rolling admissions. So all of these things are unique to every individual school. So the first question that may come up is, what is the admissions process? What is it that we need to do with you as an institution to get started in the admissions process? Then as you do that, and I'm assuming that in this process that you're already engaged in some way, shape, or form of looking at schools via the web. Maybe you've had a chance to visit campus. If not, I would highly recommend that. I will tell you that more and more schools are tracking what they call affinity. With applications soaring at many universities across the country, it's hard for universities to know which students are really interested and which are just surfing or shopping, if you will. And so in making admissions decisions, oftentimes we struggle to make sure that we're admitting the students who really want to be at our university. So one of the ways in which we evaluate that is a student who's been to campus to visit. If the student can't visit, because most of our students don't come from Ohio, they come from all across the country, including California, Puerto Rico, New York, Minnesota, Washington, state of Washington, Hawaii, in fact. So we know that there's no way that some of those students can come to campus in a timely way. So we do Skype interviews, we do on-site interviews. We have a rep we do here in St. Louis that will do those individual interviews. But if you're interested in those schools, you need to show some form of affinity. And that, again, oftentimes is the campus visit, and I would hope that you schedule that sometime here, yet this year, and if not this year, coming up this summer, and then definitely by next fall. But in getting into that campus, we'll hear the question, what's your core curriculum like? What is it that we'll be studying if we're coming in? And the reason that's a good question to be asking is because if you ask the second question about what's your most popular major, you're going to be expecting to hear, mechanical engineering, accounting, early childhood education. I will tell you that the most popular major for students coming in these days is undecided. They don't have a major. Just at our institution, 40% of the students last year who applied identified their major as being undecided. 60% have a major going in. But I will tell you, of that 60%, about half of that group will change their major after they get there. So why is the core curriculum important? That core curriculum that you'd be taking is such that it's going to hopefully count towards any of the majors in which you're thinking of going into. So if you go into the first year undecided and you're fulfilling requirements with the core curriculum, then you're not going to lose any time. You're still going to be able to graduate in the allotted time in which it takes to get that bachelor's degree in whatever major. But having a major, that's great if you know what you want, if you don't have a major. But the questions that you might be asking as you go through the process is core curriculum. Another great question, this is the one that my wife would allow me to ask, because I was limited to one after our first college visit. I was limited to one question. And this is the one that I think, for me at least, gave a lot of answers about the institution I was considering. And that's the retention rate from the freshman to the sophomore year. How many students come back for the sophomore year? I definitely would ask that question. And what that says to me, and what I think it might say to you, is that in this process, students who are happy, students who are successful, students who are doing well are going to retain at a higher rate than students who aren't. And so why aren't students coming back? Some of it might be academically they weren't prepared, but the school was just trying to get numbers in the door, and so they were taking anybody and everybody without regard to what their real true abilities were. So how many students didn't return because they didn't make it academically? The second feature of that sometimes relates to financial aid. Students may get a large financial aid package in that first year, but find out in year two that aid amount might not be the same. It could be less than it was in the first year. And if you think about this process, If tuition goes up in year 2 and your aid goes down, that gap that you have to come up with goes up from year to year. Just think of what it could be in year 4. And we'll talk about financial aid here a few minutes later on. But that retention question is pretty important. I think it tells you about the admissions philosophy of the institution, and it also speaks, I think, maybe to their financial aid scholarship policies as well. As a guideline, if you're looking at, let's just say, private universities, I'll focus on private schools. The national average for private universities is about 70 to 75% of the students returning for their sophomore year. Anything above that would be good. Anything above 90 is great. Anything below 70, another question for you to ask is, what's the most popular reason students leave the institution if they don't come back? And so ask that question as you get to those campus visits. Another one would be not only getting you into the second year, but what would be graduation rates once I get to campus? What's the percentage of students who graduate? And the follow-up question to that would be in 4 years, in 5 years, and 6 years. We're required to report data that gives a 4-year, 5-year, 6-year report. Now you might be saying, well, our goal is to have graduation occur in 4 years. That's what we all try to strive for in our positions, to make sure that students come have the ability to complete it in 4 years. But in some cases, they decide on their own to change a major in the middle of their senior year. They decide to do a study abroad program. They decide to do co-oping where it may lengthen their stay. But you want to know why is it that students don't graduate in 4 years. So ask the graduation rate. And that rate varies from school to school depending on how they report it. But I would say any school that has 60%, 65% or higher graduation rate in the first 4 years doing pretty well. After 5 years, probably in that 70 to 75% range would be kind of the norm for what you might see there. Once students go through this process and are trying to determine if this school is the right fit for them, part of it, again, is going to be the academic fit. And so the question I would have as students ask us when they come into our office, would I have been admitted last year? Here's my credentials, here's what I have. We don't know at this point in time, we don't know what our applicant pool is going to look like for this year. We don't know what our total enrollment is going to be. We don't know what our average profile is going to be because it's still we're in the works. Students are just now, seniors are just now applying and it will go through until May 1. But what students will ask, and what I would encourage you to ask, is to say, would I have been admitted last year? Here's my profile. This is my GPA. This is what I have on a standardized test, if you've taken a standardized test at this point. And here's the area of interest I have academically. With what you know about your student body last year, would this have been competitive? And if it is, that's fabulous. If it's not, then the next question that comes to us, which you might want to think about asking, is what are the alternatives? I still really want to come to your university. I may not be academically qualified to get into, let's say, a pre-med program, but those credentials still may be strong enough to get into other options there on that campus. So in asking questions, ask them, what are the alternatives? If I can't get in initially, what are some of the other options that will allow me to maybe still attend the university? For the students who meet or exceed those admission standards, now another set of questions will come about. I really am interested in being challenged to the fullest extent possible. Do you have an honors program? Is there something that we can study that would be in the form of an honors program? And I will caution you about honors programs. The word honors signifies something, but every school does their honors program differently. It's my belief that just throwing more courses onto your curriculum that have the H by it, representing honors, is not what I would call an honors program. An honors program is mission-driven. There's opportunities, a variety of opportunities that might include international experience, that might include service and leadership, all types of things that come into play there. But just taking an extra 15 courses that have an H by it to get an honors diploma doesn't really add that much value. It may look good on a transcript, it may look good as you go through the employment process trying to gain a job and you've got the graduation diploma with an honors certificate there. But to really take advantage of the program, you want to know what the philosophy of the program is, leadership opportunities, things like that. Employers and graduate schools are pretty wise to that. When they come in to recruit students at the University of Dayton, they're asking questions not only about what your overall GPA might be, but they're asking questions about leadership and service now. They want to know what kind of experiences outside of the classroom did they have. Were you involved in a co-op program? Were you involved in an internship program? Things like that now are becoming real important. A question that's being asked now by employers that wasn't probably 10 years ago, do you have international experience? More and more of our employers, more and more of our graduate schools are looking for students who have had that international experience, because we live in a global society, and your future career is going to encounter probably people from all across the globe. So if you can display global experience in that resume over your 4-year period of time, I think that would be really important as you go through the process. So again, that leads to the question, when you're visiting these schools, what international opportunities are available? Is it part of the curriculum? Is it part of the honors program? I think those are things which will help to guide you when you're looking at programs that might be honors in nature. The other thing too that we see is more and more companies and businesses, when looking at graduates, are asking about research. Have you had the opportunity to do research? And so if a campus has a program, especially in the science areas, the technology areas, the engineering areas, it's real important to seek out in, the research opportunities that they may offer. And again, it helps in the long run when it comes to employment opportunities or graduate school. What's the most popular major for students? What kind of students, once they decide on that major, what's the most popular? And so they'll give you an answer. It's accounting, let's say. But again, a follow-up question, there's always a reason to ask a follow-up question. So why is accounting more popular than your other majors? Is it because of the quality of faculty? Is it because of the facilities? Is it because of the placement rate? Why is that major popular? And if that major is not the major you're looking into as a possible choice, then what does that say about the major that you do have interest in? What are the things that make your program that you're thinking of distinctive or unique? We can all talk about friendly faculty. We can all talk about faculty who teach. But oftentimes there are more distinctions that need to be made than just having a friendly faculty member teaching a course. How are you going to be challenged? How are you going to be supported? We talk about at the University of Dayton, which we think is real important, challenging students to the fullest extent possible, but doing it with support. Challenge, but support. Because it's impossible to think that a student's going to have the ability to succeed 100% of the time throughout their 4 years. Even the brightest of students come in and will stub their toe academically. But we think it's real important to make sure that they are supported during that journey. Because again, as we go into the world of employment, the world of graduate school, we oftentimes are looking to support our colleagues in many ways as well. So looking for that support opportunity is something that we value at the college level. Speaking of support, when you do stub that toe, academically, let's say, who is it that you can turn to for that support? So the question that we get when students come to visit, the question you would be asking is, are there services available for students who stub their toe academically? Are there tutorial opportunities for students to reach out and seek help if they need help? And in the process, going back to the admissions process of how do you apply, in some cases, the admissions staff will do a review of the application and may see that support up front might be an option for you that will help you immediately as you step foot on that campus. And the reason that's great because is that in some cases, if you don't have support and you go through the first semester, now it's about the 1st of November and you're struggling and it's going to be impossible maybe to survive, but if you'd had that support day one, it might have been that you wouldn't have been in that position today if you needed that support. So in looking at your schools and comparing your schools and asking questions, are there support services available that maybe you can use? Interaction between faculty and students, how often are they available? Who's doing the academic advising? That type of information I think is valuable. If you're going to be spending your hard-earned dollars for an education, you want to know who is there in the form of an advisor. So we strongly encourage you to ask questions about the faculty who are teaching and what are their credentials. How many graduate assistants will be teaching my courses? How many teaching assistants might I have teaching courses? And then, of course, the faculty, as I mentioned earlier. When students get there and have good experiences, there are some benefits that go along with that. Oftentimes, there could be scholarship opportunities for what you've done at that campus. So as you're working with your academic advisor, and as you're going through this process, you'll want to make sure you stay in touch with them because they're going to be the people helping to recommend you for those what we call upper class scholarships. Students who do well in the sophomore, junior, senior, or the freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, but they do well on campus. So staying in touch with your faculty will be vitally important in building that relationship because they're the ones oftentimes that write the recommendations. Let's switch over a little bit to facilities. When you take those tours, obviously you're going to go on the tour and they're going to give you all of the highlights of each building that exists on that campus if they can. They're going to hopefully take you in and see a classroom. And you want to ask questions about the areas of your interest. So again, if you're going into a science-related area, I'd want to have the tour go into the labs. If the tour doesn't go into the labs, that's fine. Can you on your own make a trip back to the lab facilities to see what are they like? Are they updated? Are they current? Am I going to be working with equipment that's going to allow me to be competitive for my next job or graduate school opportunity? So taking a tour and going a little deeper than just the tour itself, going into the facilities where you might be spending most of your time, I think would be really helpful. Also, too, one of the big things, if you're going to go to a school where you're living on campus, where am I going to live? What does housing look like for a first-year student? Am I in a residence hall? Am I in a suite? Am I in a dorm? What kind of facilities do I have in my first year? After you get through that first year, then what's year 2, 3, and 4 look like? What kind of opportunities are there for housing there in my sophomore, junior, senior year? And probably the most important question when it comes to living on campus is housing guaranteed all 4 years. Some schools have that where they guarantee the housing the entire time you're on campus. There are some schools that can't. They just don't have the infrastructure in which to do that. But you want to know that now in this process. So as you do your visits and shop around, asking the question about housing opportunities, not only in year 1, but in year 2, 3, and 4, we would think would be very important. Cars on campus. If you're going to be going to a campus that happens to be maybe a rural setting and you need to have a car, are you permitted to bring a car? If you're going to go to maybe an urban setting, is there even a place to park your car because of space? So having a car is such that some students think they might need it. They may or may not, but again, most schools have policies on bringing cars to campus. So when looking at that campus, part of the questioning that we hear once a day in our meetings that we have with families visiting, can I bring a car to campus? So you might be thinking that as your son goes on to a school where they may or may not need a car. What happens then when students into the area of technology? This has now been, we used to, many years ago, we were all so excited about students being able to bring the computer, and now they bring their cell phone to class. I think they do most of the work on their iPhone as opposed to a computer somewhere. But in certain cases, that technology, which is still a laptop for the most part, that technology could have problems. And so what are the opportunities in those college campuses to help the students who have technology issues? I have a student that I'm working with who happens to be from Puerto Rico, actually, and she bought a computer in Puerto Rico at a Best Buy, and she's having some problems with it, and she's trying to figure out how to get it taken care of. So I pick her up, I drive her down to the Best Buy in Dayton, and we take it there. It's 2 weeks until she gets it back. 2 weeks.